Hello. We're going through a lot of changes at the moment in the way we live, aren't we? And in their own way, our family are doing that too in our story. When we left them, they were looking round the green house, and Louis was sure he'd heard an owl. To who? Came the question again, faintly from beyond the yew trees, and Louis on the doorstep whispered, To me, to me. Abby came to stand beside him. She heard the huff and whine of traffic at the top of the road, a faint radio from the noodle shop on the corner, the rattle of an empty crisp packet blown in a gust of wind, car doors, her own heart, a rustle from the base of the yew hedge, and the slam of a door. No owls or nowls, but once a wheezy croak. Would you like to live here? She asked Louis. Not on my own, said Louis, alarmed. No, no, with all of us. All right, agreed Louis, and then without warning took off and ran inside. Abby lingered after he'd gone, listening. The owl called again. The Narnia lamp shone on the breathing ivy leaves. There was a smell of flowers. Abby hunted in the half-light until she found them, white bells on thin wiry stems amongst spear-shaped leaves. She took a stem inside. Lily of the Valley, exclaimed Polly when she saw them. When I was little. Oh, let's try for this house, Theo. I could work much longer hours. I've been longing to get back to it ever since Louis started school. Polly worked for a charity. Before Max and Louis, she'd travelled a lot. She was wonderful at organising people in crisis. Wonderful, brilliantly bossy, resourceful, and kind. I loved it, said Polly, and I'd be mostly in the offices here. It needn't be lots of travelling, a week or two perhaps, now and then. OK. Listen, said Theo. If I didn't run a car, no petrol bills, no parking, cycle lanes nearly all the way to the hospital. Could you really manage? Asked Polly. Of course I could, easy. I'd like a bike again. Pizza on the way home? Pizza was a celebration food. They bought it on the way back with extra olives, mushrooms and chilies, and they parted with as many things as they could bear to let go, including Abby's signed Harry Potter and half of Max's savings. And they rented the house with the coloured glass in the windows, and the ivy, and the arched front door. Chapter 2. Abby thought that now they'd moved into a bigger house they might have a pet. She mentioned it when they were in the kitchen, unpacking saucepans and china. A dog? She asked. She had wanted a dog so much when she was little, she'd given herself an invisible one, Rolly. For 2 or 3 years, invisible Rolly had slept on her bed, walked beside her to the park, shared her beanbag while she read her books. Granny Grace and Theo got used to stepping round him, and on journeys and trips out they asked now and then, Will Rolly be coming with us? There'd never been a real Rolly, though. In this little flat, Granny Grace had said, not possible. There hadn't been a dog. There couldn't be a cat because of the traffic. There'd been a hamster. A school friend had got tired of him, and Abby, despite Granny Grace's horror of small creatures like hamsters, had smuggled him home. After a good deal of fuss, she'd been allowed to keep him. But you can't hug a hamster, said Abby, and could we have a dog or a cat? She asked now. Max and Louis both stopped what they were doing to listen to the answer. Sorry, said Theo, it's a no pets lease. We can't have anything like that. How would anyone know? We're just not going to risk it, said Theo. We've signed a contract that says we won't, and we've paid £1,000 deposit. £1,000? Repeated Louis, stunned. £1,000, which we can't afford to lose. That's one thing. The other thing is, it's only a 6-month lease. Does that mean, demanded Max, staring around at the chaotic kitchen, that in 6 months' time we might have to shove this all back into boxes and move house again? Not if the owners renew the lease, said Polly soothingly, which we are sure. Almost sure, said Theo. Almost sure they will, if there are no problems. So, that's it, Abby, said Theo. No smuggled-in surprises. We just can't take the risk. No, We can't, Max agreed. Don't forget my £50, half my saved up £100. He glanced at Abby so distrustfully that she lost her temper. It's my house too, she cried. This time it's my house just as much as yours. I don't want to lose my home either. And stop going on about your £50. You can get another £50. I can't ever get another signed Harry Potter book. Bang went the door. She marched out the kitchen and they were left with a horrible silence. Good for Abby, said Polly. I think you should be on Max's side, remarked Louis. Oh, do you? Said Polly crossly. Yes, and Theo on Abby's side. And what about you? Asked Theo. He can be on Mrs. Puddock's side, said Max, and Louis flew at him in fury. Louis did not like Mrs. Puddock. It was Polly who'd introduced her to the family. We've got a neighbour, she said, running into the kitchen to call people. I found her on the path. I think she was waiting to meet us. Come and say hello to Mrs. Puddock. Hello, Mrs. P, said Theo amiably. He was so tall he had to bend to look at her properly. Keeping an eye on us? Mrs. Puddock crossed little starfish hands on her stomach and looked around at them with bright glinting eyes. She had a nice smile, huge, stretching in a wavering, rueful line from invisible ear to invisible ear. She dipped her head a little and shuffled. Hello, Mrs. Puddock, said Abby, but Louis edged away. Mrs. Puddock's voice was hesitant and a little creaky, and her movements were slow. She looks ancient, said Max, when they met her again a day or two later, like a dead thing come alive. Louis stared at him in fear. I'm going to make friends with her, said Abby, causing Max to roll his eyes and Louis to beg urgently, Don't! Why shouldn't I? Because it will start Louis off on one of his stupid fusses, said Max. Just leave her alone, can't you? Abby was not used to being told what to do, except by Granny Grace. Nor had she forgotten, Don't forget my £50, and Max's distrustful glance. After that, she kept an extra watch out for Mrs. Puddock, and met her quite often, mostly in the evenings, always close to the house. She seemed to like the shadows and the damp little path by the hedge, but the lighted windows clearly fascinated her. She would pause on her journeys to gaze. Do you think she notices what we do? Said Louis, and Polly said yes, of course she did, and Theo and Max should bring their bikes in properly, instead of leaving them slumped by the wall, and people should remember to take their shoes off at the door, and the bin should be put out on time. Louis looked at Polly carefully, checking she was joking. Mrs. Puddock, said Theo, is a flipping nuisance. Mrs. Puddock, said Max, is a really stupid joke. I saw her eat a beetle, said Louis. You're a good one to talk about beetles, said Max, looking meaningfully at Louis's head, which had recently once again become home to uninvited wildlife, and he turned Louis upside down and held him by his ankles. He said he was shaking the beetles out of his hair. Louis's beetles are long gone, said Theo, turning him the right way up again. I've checked. Right, I'm off to work. I'll see you all later. Don't drive each other nuts. Be happy. It wasn't very hard to be happy in those first weeks. It was the school summer holidays. The days were bright. Sunlight chased Mrs. Puddock away, polished the ivy leaves, and found its way into the rooms, dappling them with greenish light. The last boxes were unpacked, and the rooms gradually organised. The kitchen first, then the bedrooms, then they ran out of furniture. They didn't care because they had space. Where they'd lived before, there was so little space that everyone always knew where everyone else was to be found. Now they'd room to lose track of each other. Cuts down on the bickering, said Theo to Polly, and she groaned and nodded and asked, Will they ever get on? Max spent a lot of time with his friend Danny, partly because they jointly owned a bike repair and car cleaning business, which was based at Danny's house, and partly because Danny had taken a dislike to the Ivy House the first time he'd visited. Spooky, Danny had said. It was best that the bike repair and car cleaning business was at his house anyway, because he had 4 big brothers with broken bikes, as well as several kind neighbours with dirty cars. Some days the business actually earned money, or would have done if its owners hadn't immediately rushed out and spent it on bike repair and car cleaning equipment. They told each other this was reinvesting, but really they enjoyed spending. It made them feel optimistic. Their conversations often began with, "When we get rich."